Good afternoon. Today is Monday, December 11th. This is the regularly scheduled Athletic Commission meeting. My name is Roxana Gamusio. I am the Executive Director. In order to get us started, I will do roll call to make sure that we have quorum. If I read your name, please let me know that you are here. Christy Halbert? Here. Thank you. Ben Grove?
Here.
Thank you. Dan McGrew?
Here.
Thank you. Matt Reddish?
Here.
Thank you. And Mr. Patrick Wren?
Here.
Thank you. We have everyone present with us here today. The first item of business is to note that the board had the proper notice of the agenda on the website as of June 14th of 2022. This particular agenda was also added to the board's website on, the commission's website on November 28th of 2023. First item of business on our agenda is the agenda itself, which was emailed to all of our members. If there are any changes, please let me know. Otherwise, we would need a motion to accept the agenda as it's listed.
I'll make that motion.
A motion by Christy. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second by Dan. All those in favor of continuing with the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we will proceed. At the end of the meeting, under our new business, I will make sure if there are any public comments from anyone that is here with us or participating through Teams that we take a minute to make sure that they can give us their comments on the agenda. The next item is the actual presentation of the September minutes. Those were also emailed to all the commission members. If there are any changes that you saw needed, please let me know. Otherwise, I would need a motion to accept the September minutes.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by Ben. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second by Dan. All those in agreement of accepting the September minutes as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next, members, we have the director's report. This is a financial presentation. It starts on your iPads on page 6 of the 10 pages. You have the 4 years final numbers on this particular first item on page 6. It shows that the commission for fiscal year 2022-2023 had a loss of $25,603, and then that brought the year-to-date ongoing reserve to a loss of $65,476. So that's where we ended fiscal year 23. The next item reflects 3 years so far in this new fiscal year through September. We have a gain of $176,290. That is made up of 2 events, and we had talked about possibly one of those happening last year, and it didn't. So you can see on the numbers on the revenue at the top in July, we took a large media check that helped us there, and then in August is the amount that came in from UFC. So it has not only put the year to a surplus, but also the year-to-date ending reserve is at $110,814. So this is that informational piece. We still continue on some of the changes we'd implemented, which is trying to have our field inspectors be 2 or 3 at each event, depending on the training. And so we do have several part-timers now that are trained to hopefully cover some of those, and then have the promoters make sure that they've got their staff doing the tasks that they're supposed to do. So we will continue evaluating these events. I do a profit and loss analysis after each event to the best that we can to kind of, see what we can do. I don't think anything drastically has changed as far as the smaller events, obviously still not really making money, but we're going to try to cut our costs wherever we can, as long as we are always protecting the fighters and making sure the event goes well. Like I said, this is an update only. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll be happy to turn it over to Jesse for the legal report.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll start with the legal report with the first case, which is complaint 20230578801. I'll give you all a minute to read the summary and the recommendation.
Is this at the beginning of our packet, or is this the next page in our packet?
Might be the next.
Page 8 out of the 10? Yes, toward the end. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
What would the profit loss be on this event? Do you happen to have that at your fingertips?
I do not. No,
Okay, thank you.
absolutely. But I'm happy to look at that if you'd like this particular event or any of them.
So I actually do have an update on this one. I believe that they, after we contacted them, they had stated they were going to send a check that would be received at the end of last week. Katie, did you... actually have did receive a check from them for this gate receipt tax. So I apologize for not bringing that. We received that, and it has been processed, I believe, this morning. So if you would like to recommend, or I would like to recommend closing this one with a letter of warning instead, since they actually have paid this fee.
We are seeing these gross receipt tax delayed constantly, obviously, and you all can imagine where the statute says 10 days, they hardly ever get paid in less than 2 months.
Okay, well, I would like to make a motion then that case 20230578001 be closed out.
Is that closed or closed with a letter of warning?
Closed with the letter of warning.
I'll second that.
In case number one, we have a motion by Dan McCrew and a second by Christy Halbert to close case number one as amended with a letter of warning. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Number two.
All right. Number two is complaint number 2023058021. This was a complaint alleging, essentially was actually asking whether or not we can regulate professional wrestling, which we do not.
Was the complaint made by the public, or do you have
It
that
was.
information?
It was a public member who had asked whether or not there were some concerns that they had brought to light about individuals that were engaging in the wrestling matches, and they really were just asking whether we regulated wrestling or not, which we do not.
At one time, we did, correct?
I believe so. I know
Years ago?
that's what I know. A lot of states previously did have moved away from regulating professional wrestling. Some have actually moved back towards regulating it again, but I'm not sure the full history in Tennessee. But at this point, it's explicitly in our statute that we don't regulate it.
What's the distinction between professional wrestling and MMA? Just that the outcome's predetermined, or is there?
I think that would be.
Is professional wrestling like defined? Just kind of curious.
That's to say, we don't really define, at what point it would be considered wrestling versus MMA. We have a definition for, what combat sports are. And I do think because, with wrestling being predetermined, being entertainment, I think that would be the distinction where we would say it's not really an athletic contest at that point. It's just, I don't want to say acting, but it's entertainment at that point. There are inherent risks to it, but because it's not an athletic event.
Kind of curious how, we just take their word for it that it's, or do we ask them, is this all predetermined? Yeah.
I know previously we have asked specifically, this is actually a wrestling company that has been around for an extended period of time.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious more than anything.
Question?
I'll make the motion to close.
We have second. Motion by Christy, second by Ben. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. We are closing with legal counsel's recommendation on number two. We're on to
All right.
three.
We have 3 and 4 in this report are not related, but these are both cases that we are representing just due to some new facts that have emerged. Case number 3 is complaint number 2021-064741. Just to bring everyone up to speed, and you can read it there as well. But this was previously a case involving some allegations of fraudulent blood work, and this respondent was a manager. He did tell us at one point that he had tried to take responsibility for the fraudulent blood work. The actual permit for the event never was issued, so the event never took place. So this individual actually never was a manager in the state of Tennessee as it relates to this event. He was also unlicensed, so essentially or he is unlicensed now, and he was unlicensed at that time as well. His participant license had expired. Recommendation is to close and flag this case due to the time that this individual's license has been expired, and then the fact that the promoter's license has expired, and that case was closed and flagged as well.
I so move.
Thank you. We have a motion by Dan. Do we have a second?
Second it.
By Ben to go with the recommendation from legal counsel to close and flag. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you. That moves us to case number 4.
All right, case number 4 is complaint 20230124991. This is a case that's being represented. It was also a failure to pay a gross receipts tax situation. They have submitted the form and the outstanding fee. So at this time, the recommendation is to close that case with a letter of warning.
Make that motion.
I'll second.
By Ben and a second by Matt. All those in agreement to go with the recommendation from legal counsel to close with letter warning, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you, members. Did you have anything else, Jesse?
There are no other cases on the legal report, but I know at the last meeting we had mentioned authorization to move forward with the bare knuckle boxing rulemaking. The proposed rules have been drafted and are still being reviewed. So unfortunately, we're not able to provide notice to the public to have that rulemaking today, as those are still being reviewed. But we are hoping that those would be reviewed and ready potentially by March. Unfortunately, we have that formal hearing the morning of March. So if we set a rulemaking hearing that day, it would likely be at about 2:30. I think that would give us time to do board business and then have that rulemaking hearing and have the public comment on bare knuckle boxing, and then for the board to consider, or the commission to consider those rules as well, if you all wanted to move forward with them. But I did want to give you that update since we had discussed that at the last meeting. We moved forward with those timely. Unfortunately, they're still being reviewed though.
Thank you, Jesse. The last item that I have, and then I'll be happy to turn it over and make sure that no one on the commission has any questions or comments or concerns. Want to open up if anyone in the public, either here participating in person or through Teams, has any comment regarding the agenda, anything at all. We want to make sure to capture that. Dana, do you have anyone with raised hands by chance?
No.
Thank you, ma'am. Members, I'll turn it over to you. That is all that I have so far for our meeting.
Well, I have a few issues here that I'd like to discuss and get the take on the other board members on what they think. On Tuesday, December the 5th, I attended a boxing match in Nashville. At the end, well, I thought was the end of the final. I thought it was the final bout. There was one more bout. I went ahead and left, but there was one more bout after the main event, and I was not present for that. But I did see a video of that particular event, and that had a 59-year-old man against a 23-year-old. Didn't last very long, just a few seconds. But I thought that, in my opinion, that was dangerous. This 59-year-old man was 0-0, okay? I don't know if he had any previous boxing experience. I don't know if he had been a master's boxer or what. but his opponent was 0-6, but he's also 23 years old. I don't know how in the world this guy got a license to box. It lasted about just 6-7 seconds into the round. And the guy went down, knocked down on his back under the ropes. He got up. The referee was counting. Then the referee stood there and talked to the guy for a few seconds. The guy was still uneasy. He should have been counted out. The bout should have been stopped. But the referee let it go on. The guy took a few more blows to the head, and finally his corner stopped the bout, with the guy still rocking and reeling. That was extremely dangerous. I don't think, in my opinion, a 59-year-old man should be licensed to box, especially if he has no prior experience of boxing. You know, they have amateur bouts, masters events, where you can box against someone your own age and weight. You know, I amateur officiate. I've done bouts in masters divisions with guys in their 70s, but both guys are in their 70s. This was something that was dangerous to begin with, that he got a license to box. Then the referee allowing it to go on. Boxing is a dangerous sport. It's not like other sports, as everyone knows. Boxing and MMA, it's not like other sports. You don't play boxing or MMA. You play football. You play basketball. I've been involved in matches where people have been severely hurt, and deaths have occurred. You think about the chances of a neurological damage to this 59-year-old man with one punch. I mean, I don't think we need to take that risk. And if somebody's got a bucket list that just wants to say that they boxed or whatever, I mean, let them box amateur. Let them, you know, go somewhere else. But we should not be licensing someone to box like that where they could get severely hurt. Now, I'd like to hear what the other members have to say.
Could I answer on the licensing perspective real quick?
Yes.
Because it looks like we're looking to do a rule change. This was a debut, and we don't deny debuts. If someone has no record and the matchmaker and the promoter and the trainer are encouraging them and setting them to fight with someone, and it's their debut, they have a 0 record, that is not approved. We currently approve those. One. And then second, we don't have an age limitation in our statute. So if I had denied him, that would be the commission being sued. So if we want to look at an age, either an age where they can't, if there's a 20-year age difference, you can't fight, we look at a rule to change that. If we want to look at a limit of no one after 55 can fight, we look at a rule change. We currently don't have anything like that. So if it's a debut, and you're correct, it was his dream, and the matchmaker and the trainer and the promoter thought it was a good match, then that's how it's reviewed. And then there's no age limit. If that kind of answers the perspective of how he would have been approved.
Was there a justification by the matchmaker and the promoter on this?
Yes, they put together the combatant. So he wasn't fighting against someone that had a 35 winning record, right? So they're the ones that vet and decide that. And we are looking for, we look at the neuros after 35, that's in our statute. We looked at otherwise his eyes, his physical, his blood is there. So back, with all respect to our chairman, those are rule changes that we need to address because we would have had no reason to deny the fight. I'm not saying that it should take place, but that isn't in our decision or our discretion based on our statute.
So at our gym, we had a gentleman years ago who was in his early 50s, and he attempted to do an amateur.
Your mic is off.
Sorry about that. Yeah, we had I think he was 52, and he was looking, after 2 years of training Muay Thai, to do a kickboxing match, amateur. And he was told on an amateur level, you would have.
Yeah, just of your voice. Ours has the requirement for the neuro physician to check off the minute after 35. That's it.
Right. So the amateur rules are a little bit different since they're outside of our scope. So there might be some gaps between what we do and what they do. We just do that that neuro scan. So I'm not sure. I'd have to look to see what exactly is required for amateur. But if it is a situation where amateurs are being required to do greater things than we're required, then maybe that's something where we need to button that up to make those match. Because I understand that would be a strange situation that someone could fight professionally having less clearance than someone who's fighting an amateur, and that's a little bit strange.
And I know there are.
There you go. Now I see it red. I'm sorry.
Okay.
There you go.
I remember watching Herschel Walker fight professionally at 48 against a 22-year-old, and he but I mean, also so there's definitely differences, but I don't know if we should blankly say after a certain age I wouldn't allow people, but there should be testing.
I can comment about the amateur boxing rules. After age 40, he would have had an eye exam. I think it's called an EKG, I think. And obviously he would only be boxing someone within 10 years of his age. And then going against someone with 6 bouts experience versus him having 0 bouts, that would have been questionable, and the matchmaker would have been involved in approving that match, because even though the opponent was 0-6, that is still 6 bouts experience compared to we don't know. So great care is taken on the matchmaker side, which for us, for amateur boxing, is just called a sanction holder. So they have to justify that. Was the promoter and matchmaker, were they the same individual in this case, or were these 2 different people?
They're different people.
All right.
Can you tell me on MMA, isn't there a rule of if it's your debut, you can only fight somebody with a certain amount of fights? Might have just.
I'd have to look. I'm not familiar with that.
I'm not familiar
Okay.
with that rule either.
Yeah, I want to
You
say in
mentioned an age
Pennsylvania it's like a
difference.
5-fight limit for a debut.
You mentioned an age difference. That's something, I mean, I appreciate this conversation. You all would need to decide. So we decide to draft whatever that looks like. 10 years
No,
age
I mean,
difference.
George Foreman won the heavyweight championship at 45. So, I mean, it's kind of hard.
Very hard.
I don't know where you draw the age line, but I mean, I guess I would defer to like the people who have more industry knowledge as like who probably dropped the ball more on this between matchmaker, promoter, referee. I mean, a lot of parties involved in this. Be curious to hear who you think has that ultimate responsibility.
When you are talking about George Foreman, Herschel Walker, whatever, these are individuals that excelled at one time in their sport. This gentleman, I don't know if he had any prior, knowledge or experience, which he didn't. So all of a sudden, he wants to box. He wants to be a pro boxer. His dream could have turned into a nightmare for him, his family, for the state of Tennessee. If something had happened to him, if he had been killed in that ring, would we be liable for anything? I know you can sue somebody for anything.
Correct.
So he was given a license, and it's, say for instance, his family were to say you shouldn't have done that, even if it was his dream.
He met the requirements to be licensed.
And that would be our defense. He met the requirements.
Not necessarily our
If
defense.
it
I'm
takes-
just saying that he did meet the requirements as it stands right now.
If it takes a rule change
Correct.
to protect people, from themselves sometimes. I think we should definitely consider that.
I'd like to speak to Matthew's question as well. So, in boxing, in amateur boxing, I guess those of us who have that industry experience, if someone walked into a boxing gym and said they want to be a professional boxer, the first step is always amateur boxing, always. And so I guess my concern is that the match was made without any amateur experience. So for me, it's not an issue of the Tennessee rules. It is an issue of who thought this was a good idea and why. And we don't know why. We don't know the justification. We don't know the combatant's background. So yes, I think you are correct that the promoter and matchmaker share responsibility in this. Yeah.
Well, then I'd like to make a motion that we open a complaint against the matchmaker and promoter and at least get their statements as to, what they did to vet these fighters and make sure. I mean, so much what we do is we license people and we trust them to behave and be professional and do what's best for the sport. So, I mean, from what was described, it sounds like a pretty bad matchup and gross planning by these two individuals. So if we can open a complaint, I'd at least like to hear their statements on it and maybe issue a letter of warning or worse if if those facts come to light, possibly. At least hear their side of it.
Or a letter of concern. Do we have that option?
I think we can do a letter of instruction, which is what we've done previously. It would be helpful if we already have a complaint, we've kind of looked at it. Otherwise, there's not really a mechanism, I think, just to issue that letter without having more of the facts and kind of getting their side of the statement. So I think that the complaint would work. Are we looking at doing the referee as well? Since I know there were concerns about the referees.
Well, let me say this. In that particular match, yes, the referee was at fault for letting that go on. But on this particular individual, it's not the first time that I have observed something like this. And I think that's one problem that we have in pro boxing here in Tennessee, that our officials don't know what the rules are, or they fail to apply them correctly. In that particular case, on the video that I saw, when the guy went down, he counted, then he stopped, and he talked to him for about 10 seconds or so. And like the boxer was pleading his case to the referee, then the referee let it go. I don't understand that. You give them an 8 count. At the end of that 8 count, if they are not ready to go, it's over. At the end of that 8 count or whatever, if they're ready to go, then it's box. You don't stand there and talk to them for 10, 12 seconds.
I believe that's even in the rules about administering counts and things like that. So I'd amend my motion to open a complaint against the referee as well.
I know we had mentioned it briefly. We looked a little bit or discussed about whether or not there should be any rules or regulations. There is, the statute does allow the denial of a license based on, I guess I'm going to pull it up just so I make sure I have all the wording, but we could deny based on, someone's experience or, if they weren't or didn't appear to be physically fit, I guess, to be able to engage in combat sports. But we probably need to look at rules to kind of flesh that out a little bit more, because I think it has been mentioned, but we don't know necessarily on the front end, what type of, and we do ask for, some level of experience, but there's not a requirement that someone has amateur experience. I think in other states there is a requirement for amateur.
Definitely is.
And
That's something that the commission would like to.
So they don't. Most states. Well, I can't speak for most states, but Pennsylvania, it wasn't that you had to have amateur experience, but you had to have amateur experience or something equivalent. So if you were a D1 national champion or even a D1 wrestler, you could jump straight to pro if you wanted to in MMA. If you had if you are a professional or amateur kickboxer and you want to become a professional boxer, that would cross over. But if you were just getting off your couch and wanting to become a professional, they would not let that happen.
And that makes sense. I know that other states do things a little bit differently. But if that is something the commission would like us to explore further about maybe outlining all of that and figuring out what types of situations, I think, the age difference is certainly concerning. If you look at, there could be someone who is a very fit 59-year-old fighting someone who's not as fit, 20-year-old. I'm not saying that was what happened here, but that is something that could be considered with looking at the age difference, looking at the experience difference. And maybe it's a situation where we need to match up better with what the amateur rules are, because our statute does only require for someone that's over 35 to have that neurological. So there are more strict requirements for amateurs. That's an issue. Now, some of that will be in our statute, so we couldn't change that on our own. That would have to be something to the General Assembly, something to.
You look at like BoxRec scores and things like that when approving matches.
Everything. And the few times I deny, which may be 2 or 3 a year, the promoters obviously even reach out and complain massively, as you're aware. So
We always
yes,
hear those. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, the age thing's hard to like place on a number. So, and obviously I'll defer to others who know more, but just administratively, I can see that being very difficult to put in place.
We've got a note to open an administrative complaint on the promoter, matchmaker, and trainer. I'm pretty sure the trainers are not licensed, right? Yeah. I'll look at the matchmaker. The promoter is obviously, and
I think
see
it's the
who.
referee, not the trainer.
The
right?
referee was separate. I think originally the
okay.
thought was trainer, matchmaker, promoter, those that approved the actual bout, right? Because the referee, it does not have anything to do with the bout itself in the matchup. So we'll look at who, and for this particular event, had to deal with setting up the bouts, the two that are fighting against each other.
Just one more question to kind of address another concern from the chairman. There was a discussion about referees not being trained. We actually had received an email pretty recently from someone asking about referee training. I know that the ABC does some trainings. I don't know if that's something that the commission would be. I don't know if that's something where the commission would have to contact ABC to pay for that to put it on, or if we just rely on the promoters and the referees to go obtain that on their own. But is that something that the commission would want us to explore further? Obviously, it'd be a cost if the commission sponsored one of those trainings, but it's something I think to consider. Do we need to look?
Well, let me say this. Now, the requirements for being a referee in the state of Tennessee are what? You pay your fee. Is there any previous training experience that is required? I was one back in the 90s, but I don't know if things have changed since then.
The photo ID, essentially.
They don't
Okay.
provide their training or experience at this time.
All right. Now, this commission, every year we do the Title VI training, correct? Every year we go through Title VI training. So what is the problem of having the officials go through some training every year that they have to renew their license? To renew their license, they have to do some type of training online, just a refresher of the rules and the regulations that they are expected to go by.
That's a great question, and some of our other boards and commissions do have continuing education requirements. That is something that we could consider. That would probably require statutory change. I can look into that further and report for the next meeting, because obviously it takes a statutory change. We're at the will of the legislature there, but several of our other professions do require a number of hours for refresher. As a licensed attorney, I have to do refresher training for my continuing education. Our medical professionals do their continuing education with their yearly licensing. I would think that for referees, I haven't looked at it specifically, but I think it would probably require statutory change. I'd have to look at, because our requirements are very bare bones. So I don't think we'd have authority to do that by our rules, but I'm happy to explore that further. and have a better answer for the next meeting.
Well, I think that is something that is needed because right now we're just taking someone's word that they know what they're doing when they get in there.
I think it definitely makes sense as well. Like a cut man has to be trained, but a referee doesn't.
And a lot of that is still the responsibility of the promoter. I think if we had a concern where a promoter was using referees who were obviously not qualified, most of, when you look at a lot of our disciplinary grounds, they do focus more so on the person who's putting on the contest, and we put that responsibility. However, at the same time, if we want our referees to do a good job, be knowledgeable, and kind of stand up, especially if there's a disagreement between the promoter. We have had that situation where a promoter has, wanted one thing, and commission staff have had to tell them, no, we can't. And we want our referees to do the same thing. We want them to stop a fight when they need to fight, or stop that fight, whether a promoter is happy about it or not. So that is something that we can explore then.
Well, I know that the promoter decides on who the officials are, who the judges are, and they also pay them. So what are we doing to regulate? Are we doing anything to regulate or to oversee those officials that are officiating matches here in the state of Tennessee? What are we doing? Are we doing anything to outline or to make sure that they're doing their job properly or anything? What's our job?
And that's what we do license them. We require that license. And with that, if they engage in misconduct, we can discipline them for that. And I will say our inspection staff does talk to all of the referees prior to any fight, just to remind them of the rules. Because many of our referees actually do ref matches, not just in Tennessee, but other states as well. So they remind them of the Tennessee-specific requirements. But there's pre-fight meetings with them. But it is something that we could consider with continuing education requirements or potentially initial licensure requirements. Maybe we need to look at having them submit proof of training or qualifications.
That seems appropriate to me. A lot of just came to light because I go to a lot of the matches. I'm calling Roxanne all the time. I want to go to this match. I want to go to that match. And there was one of the matches that I was at, while the referee was giving the 8 count, the bell rung. And I just didn't think that was right. And then I said something to Terry, who was at the side there, and one of the officials said, "Oh, yeah, you have to ring the bell when the match is over with." I said, "Not during the count." And they didn't know that. And when I said, they didn't know that, I mean, how are they supposed to know the rules and the regulations, with what's going on or whatever? They haven't done any studying. They haven't looked at the rule book or whatever. I mean, they go by just what they think. I mean, it's ridiculous, and it's dangerous. I've noticed moments of confusion with the officials there. Like they didn't know what to do. They look around looking for somebody to tell them what to do. A boxer gets pushed out of the ring. Do you know what to do? This one guy, he didn't know what to do. He stood around and waited for the guy to get back up. He didn't count. He looked around. What am I supposed to do? Guy gets back up in the ring. He gets pushed out again. Same thing. And again, same thing. I mean, it becomes almost circus-like, and it's embarrassing. You got people out in the audience laughing or whatever. Do you guys know what they're doing? Or what's going on? I mean, it's just kind of frustrating, when you see things like that. It shouldn't be, and it's dangerous because somebody's going to get hurt.
No, and I think that's especially when we look at our rules, specifically saying how referees are the sole arbiter of what's happening in the ring. They are given a lot of discretion in terms of when that match needs to end. I will add, when we do have a rule change or rules that are updated or laws that are changed, we do provide notice of that to all of our licensees. So that is something that they should be receiving notice of. For example, when we removed the standing 8 count, that was something that all of those referees, if they're signed up, they should have gotten that notice through the e-notify system that that was a change.
Would a requirement for education and continuing education require a rule change, or would that be a policy?
Well, it would at the very least have to be a rule. It might require statutory change. So I would like to do a little bit further just analysis into that because my gut feeling right now would be it might require legislative change. However, if this is something that we think needs to occur sooner rather than later, a rule change would be much faster than a law change just because we're waiting on getting it through session, getting through all of the bills. Certainly, if it is something that we do have the legislative session getting ready to start in a few months, if you want to contact your legislator, certainly the department works with legislators, but if it was something that you felt like you needed to talk to your representative about, you would have that ability as well.
Along the line of continuing education and training, as you're doing your research or thinking about the best way to approach this change, just keep in mind, would they be providing it preferably something with the initial license, and what type of proof would we be getting, right? Are there online companies that they would be able to take the training through? Can they take an exam to prove that they understood what the information was? Would we make our laws and rules available online for them to test? That piece would involve a cost on our part, but just things to think about, because they get the information and they're supposed to review everything for each fight. But back to the point made, we don't know that they've retained it and really know what to do on the moment of the fight if something comes up. And so is it an initial training? Would we require an exam of some sort or proof that they completed the training versus just sat there and let the computer run, right? And then continuing education, is this an ongoing? Would 2 hours cover it every year for them to do it? Or are we talking more so that once we launch the rule, it meets what we think needs to be covered and we're not back to it? I think those are great points.
Well, I think 2 hours or anything right now would be better than what we have right now, which is nothing. At least we should have some way of knowing that they are exposed to the rules, that they have read online or something, just like we do the Title VI training. We have to turn in that we get a little certificate or something. We have completed the training, something that shows that they have completed that particular training.
No, I totally agree with you, Dan. I think most fighters just assume they know all the rules, and they usually don't. What you're saying makes sense.
Chair, just a note to the chair. Thank you for bringing this to our attention.
I'm happy to conduct.
Also, is there I don't think there's a dress code for the officials that are sitting at ringside, the judges or whatever. There's no dress code. It would be great if there could be. Maybe that's something else we could bring up in the rules, so we don't have all the officials, the judges, sitting there look like they've just changed oil in somebody's car or something. But have something that looks professional, to where because if you look professional, a lot of times people will, it's just the look of somebody. Well, they probably know what they're doing, even if they don't. But the perception, it goes a long way. But we want our officials, the timekeeper, the judges, whatever, the referees, to look dressed alike, or dress smartly and neat, whatever, nice, maybe a nice jacket, dark color jacket. And I don't know if Tennessee, we don't have a little logo or a patch or anything to put on it like some states do, but that would look nice too if we had like a little patch on their jacket or whatever. They know that they are an official, and they would have that presence about them to the crowd. Like these guys, they look great. They probably know what they're doing or whatever. But I don't think there is a dress code, but maybe there is something I think that we should look at, having them dress uniformly at ringside.
And if I could ask a question, are we referring to our field inspectors that don't dress appropriately, or are you referring to the referees, people that we just license?
The referees.
Okay, and you are correct.
Referees.
There is no dress code for how they dress.
Were you speaking of judges as well?
Yes, that's what I was speaking of judges. Yes.
Judges, yeah.
Judges and timekeepers.
I think a jacket would be
Yes, something look
Something minimalist like that.
Right.
Just wear a jacket.
not necessarily a tie. Just put on a dark
Because
jacket.
that's co-ed as well.
I don't know if promoters are dictating what they should be wearing or not. I know some of our industries specifically will have. Yeah, just thinking of security guards, for example, is a question that we had with them. But the employer will often go up to my referees. It's a little bit different since you're in the ring, but timekeepers, I wasn't sure if they were timekeepers in. If they're not doing it, it's something that we could look at, or even potentially look at to say, is it a question where we need to say you need to dress professional unless the promoter specifically gives you a uniform or tells you to wear a uniform. Other states, with the question of the patch, is that something that other commissions are giving their judges or their timekeepers, or maybe you're not aware of that?
There are some that do that.
That are
yes.
issuing that
Yes.
with like the licensing card. Okay.
We used to also.
Patrick,
I was a,
Patrick, if just so I can make sure we can hear you.
Sorry.
Thank you, sir.
I used to be an inspector here. Matter of fact, for 6 or 7 years. I've been working with this group since 1974. Straight on. And this has come up and it's been addressed different ways. I know when I was an inspector, we got black polo shirts with Tennessee Athletic Commission right here. It looked good. The guys that, if you're going to have one, pony up a little money. It looked good enough where the guys that were working wanted to be seen marked and wearing that so that people knew we weren't just a bunch of guys that showed up on Friday night. We were people that were deeply invested in what's going on. You think of how much love they're in the up here. It is here for any reason other than they love it. This is some part of what makes us who we are. Okay? We've got a state. You can do polo shirts. We, as a group, could do a vest thing that you hand out at the beginning of the event, or you have your chief inspector do it. And here, you're the referee. This is what you put on. Here, put this on. Put this on. Everybody would be marked one way so that everybody in the event would know, and it would fit in with what you need. The other thing that would hopefully be accomplished is that you bet those guys need to know the rules, because it's like some of them come from another planet. It's people up there beating on each other, and you don't know what the count's supposed to be. It becomes a real issue. What's his name? The guy that was Mike Tyson's trainer got on some fight in New York, and he said something about us and how terrible, if you want to do a terrible thing, you can get anything by that Tennessee commission. He said this, and this was some years back, but there wasn't any more big-time boxing happening. And when that did happen, it was Tyson and Lennox Lewis over at the Pyramid in Memphis. And it was, a ring full of cops, because they were afraid what was going to happen. And this same guy that had put us down nationally, being the color commentator for that particular fight. And that kind of stuff hurt us. So if we can, the more professional we look, the more professional we'll be treated, and the more professional, hopefully, the people that we've got doing that job will jump out there and try to be. I said this a couple of years ago, and I got lectured that I shouldn't say anything about the inspectors. Well, we go to a lot of fights, and I paid as much as $100 to get my wife in a free fight in Jackson, where you're supposed to wear a tux. Really cool. Anyhow, with that, it still became an issue. Who's watching the hands get wrapped? Because the guys were sitting next to us eating a steak at the ring. Who's hands? Hey, who are these guys next to you? Oh, they're the new inspectors. Well, okay. So can we tighten up? I hope we can, because we got a really, really good thing. Honest to God, I have spent 60 years of my life in this state fighting. And I'm broken from it. I have to get my wife to help me get up out of a chair. And I still do it. I'm not going to quit it because I love it. And that is what we have to deal with. A bunch of people who honestly love what we represent. And we got to act like it. So that's
Or any other thoughts on things that we need to look into? I'm saying just to kind of recap, referees with initial and potential continuing education training, dress code for, I guess, all of our judges, timekeepers, referees, and then also looking at some of those debut fighter licensing and requirements. Was there anything else that the commission wanted to further look into and have some discussion on?
Motion to adjourn.
Please, I've got 2:55. Is that a motion, Matt?
Yes.
Do we have a second to adjourn?
I'll second that.
All those in agreement, say aye. Thank you very much, commission
Thank
members,
you.
for all you do. Thank you. Dana, we are good.